to another thrilling installment of The Usual Critics. I'm your host, Steve, and right now we want to get into the neat and gritty of the most talked about major comic book film in the past at least 5 years. But before we get to that, I want to start by introducing my illustrious teammates and panelists. First off, we want to start with our fearless leader, as always, Mr. Juan del Cid.
What's up, guys?
Next up, we're going to go with resident comic guru, Big Joe himself, Joe.
Hey guys, how you doing?
And last but certainly not least is the self-described cool guy of the group, Better Call Saul himself, Saud.
What's up?
And with all the introductions out of the way, we're going to step into Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. A lot's been said about it. It has mixed reviews overall between critics and fans. So with all that done, we want to want to hear our opinions and see if we can spark some conversation amongst y'all. So first off, since it is a versus film, we're going to start off with thoughts on Superman. One.
As far as Superman's concerned, I'm gonna be very biased. I'm not gonna lie. He is my favorite superhero, tied with probably the Flash and Captain America. That being said, as a movie person, I loved Superman, but I did see a lot of flaws in Henry Cavill's performance. As a lot of people have been saying, he played Superman throughout the whole movie. It was pretty much, you never played Henry Cavill, you never saw that, what we're used to, what we've read as Joe has read comics, and I don't want to say I didn't like it, but I think I don't know what Zack Snyder was trying for him to do. As we all saw, Superman was trying to play like the martyr of the movie. He was getting blamed for a lot of stuff that pretty much he wasn't doing. Um, but in the end of the day, I liked it a lot. I like what they did. His fight between he is the better person. Obviously, he could wipe out the world if he wants to. He chooses not to. Even though people hate him, he's saving the world. And I love what Zack Snyder did, where he pretty much in a lot of scenes that we saw, where he's saving a lot of people, he's saving them, and he feels somewhat not regret, but like, should I really be doing this? As we all know, that one scene, as my friend Saul told me, he really liked that scene where they look up and the people are, on top of the house. There's like a hurricane going on, and he's kind of looking at them like with some type of something holding him back. Like he doesn't feel, either doesn't feel right about saving them, but he's just stuck there. And I think he played that really well. And Nick Cavill, he played the Superman. I'm guessing that they wanted for that movie well. When the court explodes, the face he has. A lot of people will say he didn't act that much. I think it was great. I think the Superman part of it was great. I think what they were going for, he got it, which is basically him playing, just taking the hits throughout the whole movie, taking the hits, and further out throughout the movie, even in the fight scene where he's there, he seems some type of restraint because he's trying to do the right thing. So personally,
Yeah, I
yeah,
can see where you're going with that. The duality of the character isn't necessarily portrayed in the best of ways.
yeah,
But
it,
since
it,
you did mention Saul's point, I want to get his thoughts on
yeah.
from a pure, more of a film fan who's not necessarily into these characters as much as other people are. What were your thoughts on it, on his overall portrayal in this film?
Yeah, like Superman as a character, I have no gripes with him. Some people say he's too much of a Boy Scout. I think he's fine. He's basically not from this planet. So, um, what can I say? I didn't like Henry Cavill's Superman. He's too one-dimensional. There's no charisma. Like Clark Kent doesn't exist. It's Superman throughout the whole movie. But when basically the whole story they told with Superman was the visual of it. He's when he's flying and he's saving people from the flood and they're on top of the house. They see him as a god, which is how he was presented in the movie as a god. And I thought that was really well. But whenever he talked, whenever any of Henry Cavill's acting was just, uh, I guess it's like too one-dimensional. Of course, like that's what I didn't like. I just like that they um picture that they portrayed him as the savior that I guess people would actually see him like that if he were to be real. But really, I have nothing good to say about Superman. I didn't like him that much.
Okay, valid point. Can't argue with that. I'm gonna turn over to Joe now, who has a little more background on this.
Going
Joe, I
downhill.
mean, we want to
Okay,
hear what you
well,
think.
well, for starters, I want to start off with this Superman is pretty much only Superman in name only. He does not have any of the qualities that Superman has had for the past 75 years. I mean, in the movie, we barely saw him do any superheroic stuff, and when we did, he was pretty much like Juan said, questioning whether he should do it or not. I mean, if he has that so much power in him, why are you gonna question about saving lives or not? I mean, that's what Superman is. He's a beacon of hope, and yet this movie portrays him as someone who not only has doubts, but also he just thinks that okay, maybe they're right. I am a bad guy, but screw it.
Interesting. As a diehard fan of the character, I will concede to some points that he's portrayed in this film as very one-dimensional. He's singular. He is essentially Kal-El of Krypton and never really Clark. In the few instances that he is Clark Kent, it's you really don't buy the duality. But I think that's what they were trying to go for. That they really emphasized this struggle that he has between should I really be doing what my parents raised me to be doing, or should I just, you know, court chart my own course and see what that leads me to. I just don't think that it was executed the best way it could have been, and that's why you feel you a lot of you have this sort of uh, what sounds like at least disappointed view on the character. But I mean, I was a fan of Man of Steel. I'm a fan of how Henry Cavill's playing him, and I think he did the best that he could with what they gave him. I mean, there's that one line near the end where, um, they're having the big fight scene near the end of the movie, and he's getting back up to do what he has to do, but Lois is there with him, and he just says like, "Oh, nobody stays good in this world." That's a terrible line, and I think the only reason you half buy it is because of his delivery. Like that's the only reason you accept it and you don't cringe at it, but you think like, but that's just poorly written.
Yeah, I can see.
And you'll see that throughout the film, not all the time, but enough times to where you notice, the people in front of the camera are doing as much as they can to try to make this work, but it leaves something to be desired.
And the actor had the same face throughout most of the movie, also, as just kind of like it's like confused look that he has,
But
and
And
I
I
guess
guess
it makes sense. But
that's where I agree with Steve. Like, I get a feeling that's what they were going for.
It just didn't execute as well as it could have. But
Because
that's the film we got, and unfortunately, that's what it's going to be from now on. So it's something to keep in mind for those repeat viewings and for people out there who maybe haven't seen it. this is a versus film after all, so obviously Superman fights somebody, and that's no surprise to anyone. It's in the goddamn title, for Christ's sake.
No, but
Now,
this
now we're
Juan was talking about Granny's peach tea.
now now we're gonna talk about Batman himself. So I want to start with you, Joe. What is your overall impression of the Dark Knight himself, this current rendition?
Well, let me tell you, he has been the best Batman on screen that I've ever seen.
Wow, that's a
Wow.
bold statement.
Pretty bold statement. But as far as the look, how he looks, it's like the Batman come ripped from the comic book pages.
Yeah, I agree.
I had my doubts when Ben Affleck was first cast as Batman, but he literally, threw all that stuff out the door, and I now consider him to be the best Batman I've seen so far.
That's okay. That's your opinion, and I can certainly understand why you would walk away from this film, if nothing
Yeah.
else, being impressed by that.
However, the Batman for this movie, the way he was written, was so out of character from the Batman we're pretty much accustomed to that, spoiler alert, he does kill his villains. He seemed a bit more, in comparison to the Punisher than Batman in this one.
Right, but and see, that's what we just touched on a little bit a few minutes ago. Is that the same thing with Superman is the same thing that ended up happening with him, where they're not being written straight out of the golden age of comics. There are these new adaptations, and for fans who even if you're not a diehard fan, if you have some remnants of what these characters are, this is quite a ways off a departure of who they've been for, like you said, 75 years. So I could understand why you and maybe a lot of people have seemed to have this gripe with why Batman is doing this. But it bears worth mentioning, and it's something people should certainly consider. Juan, what do you think about Batman?
Uh, I want to give some more time to Joe because he seemed kind of. Did you want to go more on topic with that?
Sure. I mean, if you give me the time, I'll.
It's because look, I'll say mine real quick because I guess since Joe is more of the. We talked about this with Joe. I'll make mine simple and easy, and then he'll continue. Um, is it the best Batman that I've liked? Yes. But that being said, I'm not the Batman fan. Why did I like this Batman? Because he had more heart, he had more understanding. He's been
He
my
was more
favorite Batman.
he was more human.
But that being said, he is not the best Batman. My opinion, that still stands between Keaton or Bale. Uh,
Joe was talking
now,
about the look of Batman. He came
oh
straight
yeah,
off
well,
of Dark Knight
well,
Returns.
hold up. So that being said, like I said, he is my favorite Batman. I liked him the best. Oh man, I love the fact that they emphasized on how's it called? The grappling gun, which he
Yeah,
does use a lot. The original Batman uses that thing like crazy.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I loved. He reminded me of the old school one. But that being said, it really pisses me off that Batman was totally different, played totally different, and everyone's okay with it. Superman's played totally different, and no one, you know,
yes, it's
everyone.
a double standard. Why? Because
That
Batman's a popular character, and he's being more of a badass, so yeah, everybody passes it. But Superman takes
so
the higher road,
that
and it's like boo. But go on.
that's all I'm gonna say for now, and I'll pass it on to Joe because he had a lot to say on this last time we spoke.
Well, like I pretty much agree with what Juan says. However, like I said, this is the best looking Batman I've seen so far. That's pretty much what I gotta say on it. Uh, as far as the, his Bruce Wayne portrayal, I thought it was a pretty good portrayal of the Dark Knight version of Bruce Wayne. Not the mainstream Batman Bruce Wayne that we know, but I felt it was a very solid acting from Affleck on portraying finally a playboy Batman. because you see him, drinking. You see him with, sleeping with women. He's acting like a total playboy, which I don't think we've seen in pretty much in any other films. Or did
You
Bale do
see
that?
that? Yeah, he did that in the first Batman.
But like, just
Really,
do it like
all
to
the
that
way up to
extent to the point.
Schumacher. But yeah,
Yeah, he like buys like hotels and just like out of
Yeah,
impulse,
when he goes to that club and he has two girls like in the
or like
water.
he rents out the whole Belarus. But I see what you mean. They did emphasize with it's because there was a lot of Bruce Wayne in this. If you think about it, there was a lot more. Maybe that's true too. That's a good point, Joe. We finally saw more of Bruce Wayne and less of Batman. So I'll give you that. But Saul,
thoughts on Batman, Saul?
I agree with Joe. The look was there. He looked like he came right out of the Dark Knight Returns. I believe it's called. The look was spot on, but the feel was just I didn't feel like Batman for me. The things I did like that they did with Batman, the intro with, they don't actually show the what happens to his family. They just kind of make it into like this intro, sort of like the Watchmen intro, and there was another movie that did that recently, but I can't remember. I guess the Deadpool, the slow mo, when the gun cocks, like it breaks Martha Wayne's pearls, like that. I thought that was awesome. Alfred, uh, can't remember the actor's name, but
Jeffrey Irons.
Jeremy Irons.
Je- Jeremy
Jeremy, sorry.
Irons and Ben Affleck's chemistry, it was there. Like they made me believe they had been working together for 20 years as Batman and Alfred, and they had really good chemistry together. Batman, well, Bruce Wayne came out more like Juan said in this movie than Batman. He wasn't he was ruthless, but you could tell he had a heart. Um, he was more human than how Batman is usually portrayed. He cared. He was actually scared in some parts where humans would normally be scared, and that's kind of leading into. It was a good thing that he has emotions and all that, but then again, it also leads into the cons of the Batman in this movie. He was scared, like he was too human. He wasn't that. Uh, you know what? I'm not scared of anything. If I die, so be it. He was. He wasn't dark. He wasn't as dark as Batman is usually portrayed. And in some scenes, he came off as comedic. And Batman, if he's comedic, he's usually the dry humor type. And no, this one uh, is more like a gag. Uh, I don't know. I didn't like some of the funny stuff they did with Batman, but I thought he could have been more serious, more. I
More
don't know how to
detective.
describe it. More detective. Well, yeah, they always complain about that. I don't think any Batman's ever been a good detective in movies. But yeah, he was maybe a little bit too human because whenever lasers are coming at his face, he flinches, and obviously a human's gonna do that. But you're supposed to say Batman doesn't. Uh,
Right,
that's
and to add to your point, I, at least what the closest thing that I can try to wrap my head around as an excuse is that I think maybe they did it just to highlight how non-human um, his counterparts are.
yeah,
Because they're not really in danger of dying from a laser blast. He is, and
yeah. They
isn't,
made him seem more like
and
that's
that's
how a
so you
human
can
react.
distinguish between them. I also want to really emphasize what you mentioned earlier, the dynamic relationship between Alfred and Batman. To me, was reminiscent of the '90s Batman animated series cartoon, and that's something I really appreciated. It's something I grew up watching. For those of you, if you haven't seen it, if you can try to get your hands on it, I highly recommend it because it's good in and of itself. But it was in a more mature tone. But you still, you know, you mentioned the humor. A lot of it, most of it comes from Alfred, and you buy it. The few
Yeah.
times Batman tries to crack a joke, yes, it feels
It
out of
doesn't feel
place and
like that.
unnatural. It's so
Like I said,
yeah, it has to be said.
his
That
humor is
that
more dry, and he'll just straight face everything. And this one, he's like, "Oh, I thought she was with you." What the hell, man?
that's just
It's not.
another one of terrible lines that are in this film that unfortunately
Yes, yes.
is just it.
But
It
there
is
were
there.
some really good ones though, and
Yeah,
unfortunately,
yeah.
the worst character had him.
You want to lead into that?
I mean, yeah. It's that's certainly.
You know what? Yeah, we'll start. Let's
Go
might
ahead.
as well start off with what we thought about the movie. You and I'll start it off. Oh no, you know what? You're going on, Steve. What'd you think about Batman?
I will agree that he is not the Batman that we've known, that I've known certainly, and there are moments where that's a good thing, where we're getting this new, grittier, sort of no holes barred Dark Knight, and it's certainly in the action sequences that slays, that totally works. I mean, that whole scene where he breaks into the warehouse and takes out like 20 guys is literally like you pulled out a fighting scene from the Batman Arkham Knight games, and
Yeah,
that's great. But when you get into the more verbal things, or just what what they try to pass off as story in any case, the more plot points, it's not it's not the character, at least not entirely. There's something that's changed about him, and when you see those points, you really notice it, and you notice it for the worse. Whereas when he's in there in the thick of it, you notice that change as well, but it is an improvement. um, as you all pointed out earlier, one of the things I've always hated is Batman is never portrayed well as the world's greatest detective in film. And I was hoping that maybe this film would be a good way to show that maybe they were going to go with Batman figuring everything out, and that's how they come together. And unfortunately, that's not what happened. It's actually quite the opposite. Both Batman and Superman get tricked into, you know,
that's another thing.
Fighting each other.
fighting each other. And in the back of my mind, I just kept thinking, I don't think the world's greatest detective would have been tricked into this.
Yeah,
And if he was, it would have been it had to have been some great elaborate plot that obviously someone at the genius level of Lex Luthor would be able to do.
I want to ask Joe real quick. Does Batman ever go up against Lex Luthor like in like a game of chess or something?
Tell you the truth, as far as I can remember, they've never actually interacted that much in the comic books.
Yeah, because
They
I've never
pretty much
seen that.
kept the villains separate. Joker's always with Batman. Lex is always with Superman.
The
That was
only occurrences I know of are have usually been from an animated perspective.
Yes.
Whether they're
Okay,
shows or
so
animated films, usually when the teams get together, both the villains and the heroes, at that
Yes.
point they interact. But beyond that, it's in terms of single issues or things, no. And the things I've seen, it's always Lex has the upper hand. Why? Because he's the most intelligent human being on the planet.
yeah,
You know, but that's just something to keep in mind. In terms of Lex, I think it'd be good if we all go around the room and overall
yeah,
just quick impressions. I'll start off with Jesse Eisenberg is a great actor. Nobody can take that away from him. And the few things that I've seen him in, he's good. Some can argue that he plays the same thing. I don't think so. I think there's just different varying degrees of how much of himself he puts in roles. This was not a well suited role for him.
no, I think it was a miscast.
But whether that's a miscast or, again, a poor script, which did get rewritten by uh, Ben Affleck's writer, who he always uses for his films, but
Chris
that was the
Terrio.
rewrite. Yeah, Chris Terrio. So that's something that people need to keep in mind. They already had a script, and then they got Ben Affleck to be Batman, and he brought in his writer to come and do rewrites, and that's why I feel like you get these segments of some things really work well and other things feel out of place or sound odd because it's too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah,
Um,
Yeah.
and that's why you get things like Jesse Eisenberg as Lex. And another thing that's probably good to point out is that technically he's not really Lex. He's Alexander Luthor. He's Lex's kid. So if people really didn't like Jesse, and I didn't like him for the role, then hopefully Warner Brothers can pull out the cop out card and just say, "Oh no, that's really his son. Clearly, you guys didn't like him. We're gonna bring out somebody else to play his dad, and then that hopefully that actor will be better." But
I think that's what they might go with because
you know, Justice League starts shooting in like 3 weeks, so I mean,
Actually, 1 week.
and they haven't even announced anything. Well, they might.
so I'm assuming they're not gonna do that. But
Perhaps.
one can hope. But Juan, your thoughts on Jesse as Lex?
Uh, um, I've seen some people say that we know he can act, and a lot of people are like, "What? He always plays the same." No, he doesn't play the same guy. I don't know where I heard it, and no, it's because someone said that Jesse Eisenberg coming out in the Social Network, that real smart ass, um,
Like talking down to
real,
people.
you know how he was serious, always, yeah. So we know he could play Lex. So that being said, I know it wasn't him, and it's like I said, I honestly think a lot of these people's complaints were due to the director or like what they wanted them to do.
The writing.
I don't want to take too long on this. Uh, he had a lot of good parts. They made him seem like in the movie they played it so well to make him seem like the bad guy. The music in the background, the ambience, like just the feel that you would get. Um, the scenes with the portrait, all the good. He had a lot of good lines.
Yes.
Uh, If you think about it, he had a lot of good lines. I'm not gonna go into detail, but I mean, everyone saw they don't come from the ground, they come from the sky, the demons, or um, when he's talking to Superman, he tells him, if God is all good, then God can't, what does he say?
If God's
Um,
all powerful, he can't be all good, and if he's all good, then he
he's all
can't be all
good.
powerful.
Yeah. He had a lot of good lines. I feel he delivered them, even though he didn't deliver them the way he wanted to. That being said, I don't know what they were going for. Like, I seriously don't. Um,
It's like I'm
but
saying, I think it's an example of too many cooks in the kitchen. They wrote
that's
too many different versions of him, and he tried to do all three, I think.
that's
And
all I that's
yeah,
all I'll say on him. I know he can act. I know he tried his best. Unfortunately, that's what the director wanted.
Yeah. I think that's just the way the character was written,
So that's all I'll say about that.
and um, like I did. Lex Luthor did come off as like this guy is cruel, like savage. He was kind of, I guess, a little messed up in the head the way his thinking was, but they kind of explain why with his father and all that, saying that he used to get beat or something, and he didn't believe in God when he was little. So then he tries to take that out on Superman, and it convinced me that, oh, this is why this guy hates Superman. And that scene with Granny's peach tea, I thought that was great. It just showed it's kind of the catalyst to where it starts showing how bad this guy can get with all the money he has, with all the intellect he has. He gets Superman's, yeah, this is, we already said it's spoilers, but he gets Martha, which is Superman's mother. He kidnaps her and he brings the pictures from a Polaroid camera to Superman, and so he's standing in front of this godlike being, like, "Hey, look, I got your mom. You know, what are you gonna do, bitch?" And that was badass, man. Like I like that Lex Luthor, but a lot of it was really messy and just like how did Lex Luthor know to make how to make Doomsday out of General Zod? That was, we all saw it in the trailer, but that was really messed up. They kind of lost me there. I didn't know how the hell he came up with that.
Well, I mean,
Steve.
this thing's it. They showed in the movie. He's in the Genesis chamber from the crash ship, and the computer tells him.
Yeah.
But again, that's a very weak plot point. One of many
Yes.
that is sort of unfortunately plagues this film. But Joe, um, how do you view Lex overall?
Well, I think my two buddies covered up all the points that there was supposed to be about Lex. Uh, I know that I just read an article about Zack Snyder on why he casts Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. Let me tell you, the reason he casted Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor was because it would be cool, and I quote him right there: "It would be cool." Jesse Eisenberg originally went in for the role of Jimmy Olsen,
Yeah.
and for
I
some odd reason, Zack Snyder decided to put him on as Lex Luthor. That's it.
No, and I
He
hear
went
what
in.
you're saying,
Yeah,
and it's like Sal said right now. When he finally gets to that final layer of just maddened, sociopath, it is cool. So I can see what he saw. It's just again everything that builds up to that is mismanaged and not well planned out or thought out or showed, and to the point where I mean so it just says right now, how did he figure out how to make that thing? Well, the computer tells him, but that goes by so quickly, and it's not properly vetted and showed to people that when you see it, it's like, well, okay, you could have missed it, and now you don't understand, and that happens multiple times throughout. So it's the character could have been better, but I don't put that solely on the actor. Is where I stand on that. But hopefully, with future iterations, it'll improve. I'll have to wait and see, of course. But now we're gonna move on to overall rating for the film. So, it overall, we just want to hear each one of you guys' opinion on this, and I'll start off with Joe. Joe,
I would have to
what's your
give
opinion on
this.
this, and what's your rating?
Well, I would have to give this film a 6 out of 10. Uh, there was a lot of hype behind this film, and it could have been so much better. However, I mean, the editing process, the script, they were really weak, really bad, and I think that really hurt this film. I felt that this movie was supposed to break, lots of box office record, was supposed to get critically critically praised by critics everywhere and by the public, but instead it got panned by the critics, and between the fan base, it divided them. So, and also another thing, I mean, this film was supposed to come out last year. They extended it the release for one whole year so that they could work on it and make it better, and yet this is the end result we got after that year of improving it. So I don't know what the cut would have looked like if we had gotten it last year. Uh, so that's pretty much it for me.
Thanks, Joe. That is something that most people will forget at this point. That it is about a year overdue, and this is what we got. Juan, overall impressions of the film and your rating, if you please.
Uh, when I first saw it and I came out, I was odd. I loved it. I'm not gonna lie. I still love it. Right. I'm gonna take the bit on this. I came out. I believe I gave it an 8.5. 8.5. Um, but right now, just talking about everything, I kind of feel like my fanboyism took over that day. I finally got to see Superman versus Batman, Batman versus Superman, as the title is. I got to see Doomsday. A lot of people didn't like him, but there's not a lot of ways you can mess up Doomsday. He's pretty easy to do. Like big dude, gray. I liked him. I liked the fighting sequence. I liked Wonder Woman. I liked everything about it. But now, after looking at it, I have to put that aside. And as a movie person, I give it a 7. I'd give it a 7 because pretty much what you're gonna hear from everyone is it was good, it was okay, but they're disappointed. And unfortunately, a movie like that, as much as I hate to say it, the delivery wasn't there. Whether it was Zack Snyder's fault or the director's fault, the delivery wasn't there. There's so many things. As much as I hate it, Henry Cavill played Superman the whole time. Batman wasn't really Batman. Uh, what else? Jesse Eisenberg. It was really fast paced, really fast paced, which a lot of people like that for the general audience. I don't want to get bored. I didn't feel it boring. A lot of people said it dragged. Um, there was a lot of scenes that were unexplained, as you guys said about the chamber part, the nightmare, which people that watch movies and read comics know what that meant. It meant Darkseid coming out, which for years of those for those of you who don't know, Darkseid is a bigger villain, the biggest villain pretty much in DC, if I'm not mistaken, Joe.
That's
Is that
correct.
correct?
That's
He's the
correct.
he's the biggest villain, and unless you know about the comics or unless you looked into it, you won't know that. I mean, even in the ending when Lex Luthor's saying the bells have rung, that's straight out of a comic, also, right, Joe?
That's correct.
Um, so they didn't emphasize on a lot of things. They didn't show you, like, a lot of people are gonna say, who was that in Batman's dream? You don't know who that was in the dream. You don't know where they're going with this. And as much as I hate to say it, and I don't want to go off topic too much. I bitched out Age of Ultron a lot. I really did. But as much as I bitched them out, you know where that's heading. Even the people that know, there's a big purple guy in the end of the movie that's pulling off. You saw it in Avengers. You saw it in. I think you saw some parts of him in Age of Ultron too, right? Or no? No, no.
Correct.
Yeah, they emphasized it. Or even the little, there was some hints to it.
Infinity
And with
Gauntlet.
this, yeah, the Infinity Gauntlet. And with this movie, I felt they kind of tried doing that, but they didn't do it. They didn't do it right. They didn't emphasize dark side. They didn't emphasize anything, which a lot of people be like, good or bad. Some people be like, yeah, well, no, they shouldn't pander to the audience, and other people should be like, they should. In the end of the day, whether they pander to them or not, that's what they're going for. They're going for dark side, and if you're gonna hint at it, make it more, at least mention the name or mention some type of entity or something. Like Lex Luthor could have been like, something's worse coming. They did say it with Affleck when he's like, I just feel something really bad's happening, but you don't know what. You honestly don't know what. There's some guy who came back from the past or in a dream. You know, I know that because I know it's Flash. Um, just so many things that were wrong with this movie. But like I said, I liked it, but that's fanboy talking. Um, in the end of the day, like I said, I give it a 7. And the reason I give it a 7 is I think if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. Give it your own opinions. Like I said, I loved it, but there's a lot of you know things missing. But I'll give it a 7. And I think anyone who chooses not to see that would be a mistake. You need to watch it just so you can at least form your own opinion.
Yeah, I would have to say I agree with a lot of your sentiments. When I first watched it, and I came out and I enjoyed it, and but I knew what the problems were, but I wasn't focusing on that. I was still on the high of these two behemoths went toe to toe for like 2.5 hours from in front of my eyes, and no one can take that experience from you, or for anyone when they watch it for the first time. But when you sit back and look back at it, and I remember I saw it, before opening weekend, and you guys waited until about a week or so. And when I talked to you and you asked me, I didn't spoil it, or I tried my best not to spoil it for you. But I basically told you all, keep realistic expectations. Those scenes that are left for the viewer to try to interpret, as one pointed out, if you don't have a frame of reference, you don't understand it. And as someone who does, as a fan, even the way they did it, for someone who does know, is also it was also it left something to be desired. When Batman starts seeing these things, but they make it seem like they're dreams, and that doesn't make any sense. Why would he? Now you're giving him what? Like he can see the future. Now he has a
He's a clairvoyant.
superpower. Yeah, like he's not. That's not what he is. Um, One of them I could pass off. I'm like, oh, he had a terrible nightmare because he's paranoid about Superman. That I understand. It's a bit of a stretch, but I get it. But the second one, the one you alluded to, is where Flash from the future comes back and warns him that Lois is the key, that you were right about Superman, and you need to stop Lois from dying, basically, is what he's getting at, or like the world's going to end. That I knew what it's referencing, what it's talking about, but then Batman wakes up again, and it's another dream. And again, that makes no sense to me because you're talking about a character that's going to come out later, and they even make reference to him in the movie when Batman opened those files that Lex had on different metahumans. And you should be able to understand that he's coming from the future. So if he's coming from the future, why is he invading his dreams? It's almost M. Night Shyamalan ish, and as someone who I hate that guy's work, it just irritated me, and it still does. It makes no sense. But but beyond that, it's just there are inconsistencies throughout this picture that leave marks, and that's unfortunate. But that does not mean it is a bad film. It is a good film. It's just not a great or an exceptional one. And visually speaking, it is breathtaking. But that's classic Zack Snyder. He's always been style over substance. He's always had this learning curve with not being able to really direct and tell great narrative. With Watchmen being the exception, but then a lot of people didn't like it anyways, and then that's a matter of
Dawn of
opinion.
the Dead.
That's another that's another genre film, and if you're not into the genre, then you're not gonna like it anyways. Um, so overall, I when I first came out, I gave it an 8, and that was just because I was running on adrenaline. And looking back at it now, I'd have to give it a 7. It is good for me. The good outweighs the bad, but I also don't live in this fanboy mentality of you what you're crazy. No, no, no. The movie has problems, and they bother me just as much as they bother other people. Maybe not as much as they might bother like Joe. For your example, it's to the point where it really bothers you, and I understand that. I can accept that, and I won't fault you for it. But I think there's enough good in here to make this a pleasant going experience. So I would recommend, if you haven't seen it, that you should go see it, and I would recommend that you do it in the theater because this is, a feast for the eyes. And if you can see it in theater and even something like IMAX, then you should. And then you be the judge, and hopefully you at least have a good time. But with that, I want to move to last guy, Saul. Overall thoughts and rating.
Yeah, this was actually the first time I went to the Palladium in San Antonio. It was the IMAX theater. So since it's being a comic book movie, I'd have to rate it as a comic book movie. For the comic book fan, this movie was a spectacle. Uh, yeah, it had like a lot of downfalls, a lot of stuff that wasn't up to par, but it's Batman against Superman. Just the title alone should tell you like what to expect. And Batman does fight Superman, and it's like one of the greatest things I've ever seen like on screen because those two are just powerhouses that we've always wanted to see go up against each other like in the theater. Um, I'm a little conflicted. I really liked the movie. Yeah, it did have a lot of flaws, but like I said, I have to judge it as a comic book film. I'd give it an 8 because it was very entertaining. Even they might have not gotten the characters right, but it was still very fun to watch, and At the end of the day, it was worth watching. I I think the movie did what it set out to do, even though it was a little sloppy about the way it went about it. But it set up another franchise. You know there's gonna be a Justice League. You know people are gonna go watch it anyway. The movie did what it was supposed to do. It didn't fail. It didn't bomb. Whatever people say, this movie set them on the right course, although it was very messy.
Yeah, that is certainly some truth to that. And I mean, we could keep going on and on about this. There's plenty of things we didn't touch base on because we want to keep this within relative time and we don't want to spoil too much. If that, um, things like characters like Wonder Woman that get thrown in there, not a lot of time usage, but definitely worth seeing. One of the few highlights. And just we can keep delving down this, but I think we're gonna. It's all the time we have time for today, and I want to thank you all for your time. And until next time.